Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So pleased to see you here, and we have a wonderful opportunity of Philip Fourie talking to us about his life. A little about Philip. Philip is a highly respected, prominent and influential member of the Gansbaai community, whose anecdotes and stories give us fresh appreciation of Gansbaai and its residents. His mother brought up 8 children after her husband, who worked on Dyer Island, died, age 41, leaving them essentially penniless. This was to have a profound effect on Philip's life and prospects. He attended Napier High School, where he served on the student council. He was one of the top pupils and won a scholarship to the Teachers Training College in Wellington. He was unable to take this up because he had to go out to work to help pay for his youngest sibling. This was the rule in the family. Philip was then offered a position in Sanlam, where he attended every course that was on offer and rose through the ranks to become a senior manager. He left Sanlam to start his own brokerage business that has developed innovative products, notably in the education and school sector. He is proud to have traveled on business to Europe, the USA, Britain, and the Far East. The sea and fishing are the cornerstones of Philip's life, and fishing has formed the foundation for his development as a person. He retired to Front Kraal in 2002, where he has a house overlooking Gansbaai. His love for and affinity for the sea endures, and he has been a member of the Birkenhead Ski Boat Club for 15 years and chairman for 10. Philip is an engaging speaker whose story reflects the way a person without the start of privilege or money can overcome obstacles and build a better life for himself and those around him. Thank you, Philip, for being here, and thank you for your preparation. And we are looking forward to hearing about your life in Gansbaai and the world that you've experienced, and Walt Mapham. Thank you for making this possible. So thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here, and I hope you will enjoy my story. I've recently again read this little book from a gentleman called Richard Bach, and the book name is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. You probably have all read it. In that book, they refer to special people who would like to do things good. And also people will realize that there's more than this living thing that we are involved in than just what the eye sees. I met 2 such persons, and I'd like to say big thank you to Walter and Mapham, who always amazed me with their thirst for knowledge and stories about Gansbaai and the people of Gansbaai and our experiences. And they convinced me to tell my story. And that's why I'm here today. Thank you to you too. It's a story about love and a story about life. It's also about hardships, but also very joyful moments. A beautiful area that we lived in, and our experiences, and especially my experience as a young boy from the early age of 4 years when I came to Gansbaai. It's also a story about a most remarkable woman, my mother, and I will talk about her later. And I would very much like to dedicate this little talk to her. What you see here in front of you is photos, very old framed photos. I love these old frames about my father and mother. That's exactly what they looked like. My father, his name is Philippus Kuna Daniel, and I've got the same names. In fact, I'm the 8th generation of the Fourie family, and about 6 of us has got the same names. My father was born in 1913, and he passed away in 1954 at the age of 41. My mother, Christina Magdalena, previously Lawrence, was born in 1917, and she passed away in 1980 at the age of 63. My father, according to my brothers and sisters, especially my mother, was a very romantic person, but also a dreamer. He always had lots of schemes and plans And he obviously had big plans for his family also. He bought a small piece of farmland from his own father at a place called Moeraskloof, which is about halfway between Gansbaai and Bos. And he also bought a stand in Gansbaai on which he, on his own with one or two persons that were helping him, started to build a house. And then he got a job from the government to provide provision to the islands in the Saldanha area. His plan obviously was to come back to Gansbaai and do all kinds of things, including fishing, farming, and probably to do other jobs for government as well. He worked for many years on Daya Island also, so he knew the area very well. Unfortunately, things didn't work out as planned. He died at the age of 41 in a motor accident. At that stage, we were still in Saldanha, and my mother was expecting the 8th child. She was just under 2 months pregnant. We had to move from that government house, so we all moved to Gansbaai. The house then was partly completed, not fully, but we could have moved in. So that's really where the story started. I was age 4, and we moved to Gansbaai, my mother, and by then the 8 children. She received a once-off pension from the government for the couple of years that my father worked for them of £31, and then an annual pension amount of £16, which equates to £1.3 a month. And that's with what we started our living in Gansbaai. What you see there is our family. You'll see my brother there, my brother Dani, he passed away now. This is my brother Yanni and his wife. My sister Christine, she passed away. Albie is very fortunate to be with us today. My younger sister, and here's myself. This is my wife, Lorraine. That's my brother's wife, and that is that brother's wife as well. And this is the husband of my sister. That's our family. There are only 4 left at the moment. I'd like to share to you something about nicknames. When we talk about families, especially with the older generation, most of the old families had nicknames. And there were very good reasons for that. Imagine 4 Fourie brothers joining the Gansbaai area and married 4 Groenewald daughters. Can you think what can happen if you start with intermarriages with these 4 brothers and 4 sisters, both coming from 2 very similar families? So it was a known fact that the people had to have nicknames, amongst others to prevent intermarriages. So one of the first questions somebody will ask you when you say, I'm Philip Fourie, he said, Van watter Fouries, from which Fouries are you? So that is to find a line, the family line. So in our case, we were called die Keese. Kees is Afrikaans name for baboon, die Bobajana. The Kees nickname has got a very interesting origin. My great-great-grandfather was also called Philip, and he lived in an area called die Kloof, close to Bos. In fact, that area is still known as the Bos Kloof. And he, like many of his fathers before him, and there seemed to be a whole thing in our family, they were lay preachers. The nearest real preachers we found in Caledon, Stellenbosch, and those areas. So he used to have his sermons or his Sunday gatherings in the open field in the Bos area called the Kloof. And this one particular day when he delivered his sermon, it was in December and it was mealie time. But this gentleman had a speech problem. He couldn't pronounce the word G, so it came out as K. So this particular day, remember now it's mealie time, it's December month, all the farmers sitting around in the open under the trees listening to him. And he wanted to tell them that die Heilige Gees kom deur geloof. Now what came out is die Kees kom deur die kloof. So it must have been wonderful to see how all these farmers immediately left the sermon because they wanted to start protecting their mealie fields against the Kieser. And from that day, Philip, my great-grandfather, became Philip Kies. And that's where we got the surname from. And the people still, the old Gansbaai people still know us as the Fourie Kieser, and I'm known as Flippy Kies. There are some photos of my childhood. You'll see on the left here, that's me, that little boy here. And that's my brother in the middle, and that is my sister. And here is also my three brothers, and the very youngest one here. You can see the very old, typical clothes that we wore, funny cookies we wore. We had a very happy childhood despite being poor. And this bottom photo, you'll see myself and my brother close to a tent that we normally camped in the island Karlsmond. I will refer to that later. And the photo on the right is my brother and myself at our rugby clothes. You will see no tocs. I got hold of my first rugby tocs when I started Standard 9 in Napier. We played barefoot. There was just no way that we could afford tocs. So that's something about our family. I want to talk about the Gansbaai Harbour and the Gansbaai area, the old houses and the boats. What you see there is a very old photo taken approximately between 1906 and 1908. And what is very evident is all those beautiful houses you'll see on the far side, all limestone houses with thatch roofs. It's a great pity that none of them are left. That's history, it's gone. The Gansbaai area developed very slowly, especially in comparison with the Hermanus area. The main reason for that was it was extremely difficult to get to Gansbaai. The ox wagons and horse wagons that they used, horse carts, found it very difficult to cross the sand dunes, the thick sand. It was a very popular fishing area, but to get the fish out and to market it was virtually impossible. So you can only fish and use what you can use, and that's it. We know about many expeditions that were taken, as they call it, over the Berg at that stage. And it is particularly known that Lady Anne Barnard, as far back as 1798, visited the Tripkelders at the Kelders, which is very close to Gansbaai. And she recorded many lovely incidents that she experienced on the trip. How they, for instance, were trapped in the sand, couldn't get out for hours and hours, and how she went down the caves. She really recorded a lot of it in her diaries. The real development of Gansbaai only started in the period 1816 to 1866. And you will see some photos that were taken. This one was taken in 1938. You can still see some of the houses there, but not many. There on the far left, you can see some of them, and in the center as well. And there's other photos. This one was taken in 1954. Also, only 2 of the typical thatch roof, or maybe 3, that were left at that stage. Also notable is that all these houses were built right around the harbour area. There was no structured town planning. They just bought a site or were given a site close to the harbour, and that's where the houses were built. It's only in the later area, and this photo referred to a particular period in 1976, when the population of Gansbaai was about 1,800. It's only then when you can, for the first time, see a structured town layout. You can see the various streets and the blocks of houses, and the harbour there on the right-hand side, and especially notable, none of those old houses are visible. All gone. What a great pity. All gone. Another photo is a typical harbour scene. You see lots of people gathering around the boats, and there you see some of the typical longer rowing boats that were used. It's not the same as the Gansbaai Oopskate that I will refer to later, but quite similar. And there on the left top part, you will see 1 or 2 of those old houses that I referred to previously. The fishing boats that were used were originally called the Oopskate, the open boats. And there you will see some of them. All the boats were identified with the letters EDF. Very interesting, that middle one is EDF2, so it must have been one of the very first boats. I will refer to the Oopskater in my talk later on, and also about the Gansbaai canoe, and also the what we call deck skater. Here is another photo of the Gansbaai harbour area. And from the age of 12, I was very much involved in those particular scenes. I went out with those boats, and I will refer to that later. And here you can see on the foreground lots of fish, probably shellback lying. And a typical photo on the middle there's one of the sheds that they use to put the equipment in their oars and their fishing lines and the skate cases that I will also talk about. So this is a very interesting and very old photo. And this was taken around about when I was about 12 years old. This photo is showing the one side of the old canoes. A very interesting story about the Gansbaai canoes. Now, here is the Gansbaai canoe. What is so unique about this boat is that a wreck of this particular boat was found in the 1930s by a certain uncle called Fourie in Gansbaai. This boat was totally unique for the Gansbaai people to look at. It was border, as you can see, it's quite a wide boat, and he had this very ugly stump nose, totally new to the Gansbaai people. Normally your boat had a very, very sharply angled front. So one of the fishermen in Gansbaai, a gentleman called Magin Groenewald, decided that he wanted to build this boat. And it was very soon evident that this boat had a big capacity to carrying fish, and it could take the heavy seas easily. It was just peculiar that this boat worked in the Gansbaai area, and very soon it became the most popular and actually the boat to be used. And that is the Gansbaai canoe. That's how it originated. There's about two still left visibly in Gansbaai. The one is in the entrance to Gansbaai when you just come right into the town. And the one is standing in front of, in Gansbaai, next to the old museum, which unfortunately I hear will now be dismantled. The whole museum will disappear. Every single item in that museum will be distributed all over the country. So there will be no Strandveld Museum anymore within the next month or two in Gansbaai. I refer to the Oopskater, and you've seen the photos of those, and I refer to the canoe. And here you'll see a photo of the other typical boat that was used in Gansbaai and still being used, and that is the deck skater, or sardine boats in English. And you will see on the left hand here still one of the old houses standing, although you can see it's already going down. And not long after that photo was taken, this house just completely collapsed. But you will still see some pictures and paintings of people who painted that particular house and this particular harbor scene. It's quite a popular painting. How come that the deck skater started in Gansbaai? Gansbaai Marine were established in the 1960s, and then the fishermen bought 9 deck skater. And they were all named with the word Gans in it, obviously referring to Gansbaai. We had the Sneeuwgans and the Wilde Gans and the Stormgans, and so all the boats had the name Gans in it. Later on, these particular deck skater were replaced by newer ones with better engines. And another unfortunate thing, the name Gans also disappeared. There's still one boat left with the name Gans in the name, but there's no Sneeuwgans and Wilde-Gans, the Stormgans left. They're all gone. And I found it strange that we couldn't keep typical names of Gansbaai. I can't blame anybody, but somehow we lacked some insight about our history. You will also see that we never talk about boats. A boat was something different. A boat was a skate. And there's a Oopskate and a deck skate. We don't talk about a sardine boat. We talk about a deck skate in Gansbaai, typical Afrikaans name. 2 other items that I would like to talk about that's very typical to the Gansbaai area is the skate kussie and also the keerswiel. Now, what you see here in front of you is a typical photo of a skate kissie. It's a little box made out of timber. You will see that there's a flap that can be opened, and that flap was fastened with a kind of a sail material, very similar to antenna material that we use today. And it was nailed to the other side of this kissie. And when you open the flap, you'll see there's a little drawer that can be taken out. And in that drawer, you got the sinkers and the hooks. And then the bottom part was quite big. And that's where they kept their hand lines. This particular photo was taken from the skate kissie that I still own. I think I'm one of very, very few people in the world that still have a skate kissie in his possession. And that skate kissie still has the original lines with all the little gadgets that the fishermen use on the lines. You will gather that they only used hand lines, never a rod. A rod was used for angling only. Fishermen on the boats only used hand lines. The other unique item or artifact known to Gansbaai is the keerswheel. Now, the history of this is that my great uncle Dani Fourie Kiers, he was born in 23 July 1888, and he lived quite a long life until 20 April 1981. He was a carpenter, very, very good carpenter, and he made most of the furniture in the Gansbaai area. And he then developed this keerswheel. The typical old keerswheel has got no copper, no metal in it. It's all timber. You will see the photo from the side, the little handles that you use to turn the reel. And on the other side, it was just a flat piece that was fastened with ropes, just normal ropes, to an old bamboo rod. And the lines that were used is very similar to the so-called braid that people are using today. It's a kind of a nylon line that they used, no artificial lines, it was just pure cotton. That is the keerswheel. Again, there are very few keerswheels left in, I will probably say, in the world. Our family still got one. And I know that the Burgernet Boat Club in Gansbaai still have one that is actually on loan from a gentleman called Peter Scholes. He was for many years the DA council in Gansbaai and also at the time the deputy mayor in Oeversland municipality. The full rod and reel is still on display in that Burgernet Boat Club. So referring to all these items of Gansbaai, one can't but think about what was my own experiences. What was my thinking, and probably still is, about the ethos of Gansbaai and the community. And you probably know that in all small villages and towns, there are people of, let's say, less savory characters. And Gansbaai also had them. And it's easy to get a perception that many people still have that Gansbaai is a lekker plek. A plek for lots of dancing and drinking and partying. And you probably heard that song also, Gansbaai is a lekker plek. My understanding and how I experienced Gansbaai was totally different. The community that I grew up with was wonderful, real salt of the earth people. Hardworking, honest, people who understand nature. The fishermen had an absolute knowledge of the sea, the climates, and also they all had a very firm understanding of a higher hand. Nothing just happened. There was a reason for everything that happened in their life, and they believed that their lives were controlled by somebody else, somebody far beyond their own realm. That's how I experienced them. At the time, there was a certain Dutch reform Dominee Pretorius, who came to Gansbaai, and he wanted the fishermen to come to church. Because funny enough, despite their beliefs, and probably because of their own beliefs, very few of the old fishermen went to church. They had their own understanding of how life works, and they believed that they probably couldn't get it attending Sunday ceremonies. So Dominee Pretorius went fishing with him so that he can experience the way that they live, the fishermen, And he then tried to convince them to attend the Sunday church ceremony so that they can experience how he's working. But he wasn't successful. There's also another thing that I experienced, and I called it a childlike naivety that the old fisherman had. And I remember one specific incident which will probably illustrate exactly what I mean when I talk about childlike naivety and belief. This particular incident referred to a very popular and well-known old Gansbaai fisherman called Hans Fourie. I used to go out with Hans Fourie in one of his canoes from a very early age. And this one particular day, it was what we call a geelbek skytdag. Now, a skytdag simply means that it's a beautiful day to go out fishing, especially after the northwesterly wind has blown for probably more than a week on end. Because the northwesterly wind brings the warmer water to the coastline. And with that, it brings the geelbek, the Cape salmon, within reach of the local fishermen. So an ideal fishing day was the first day when the sea was calm enough after this heavy storm, after the northwesterly wind. Because invariably that first day will be the day that you will catch geelbek. Maybe the second day also, but most probably only the first day. So the skytdag is a good day to go fishing, and a very special skytdag if it was after the northwesterly storm. So on this particular morning we went out. It was a geelbek skytdag. It was still dark, very misty, and we were definitely lying on the right spot. And very soon we could hear the other boats catching geelbek. You could hear it from the knobkerrie, how they try and quiet the fish, and also with the flapping of the tails on their boats. So we could hear people catching fish, but nothing happened on our boat and around the boats, only Hans and myself. And the next minute, he looked at me with a kind of an astonishing expression on his face, and he touched his pocket, and he took out some coins, not many, and looked at it, and immediately threw it in the sea. And I said to him, Hans, what's going on? And he answered me, he said, Boet, we are on this sea to catch geelbek, so that we can get this geelbek to the corporation and weigh it in so that we can get money to buy food. So what am I doing with money in my pocket on the sea? So we got rid of the money, and in his belief, the order was restored. And very soon after that, we started to catch a lot of geelbek. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that he truly believed that getting rid of that money will have a message to the Almighty. And he was indirectly asking, okay, I haven't got money with me, give me the fish. It happened. So you get these experiences of really true belief. And I can share one with you. And I'm very happy to see my brother with me in the audience today. I was probably in standard 9, and my brother told me that my elder brother Albie will come and visit us for the weekend from Cape Town. And she said to me, how wonderful will it be if you can catch a galjoen for him so that we can buy it. And I looked at her, and it wasn't a day to catch galjoen. Galjoen fish needs heavy storms. Lots of foam on the water. And for the whole week, the sea was like a mirror, calm, no waves. There was just nothing going on in the sea. If there's no wind and no strong water, no bait, what we call red bait will come out. So you can't get it, you can't collect it. It was just not on. But I took my rod and I went down to the harbor, and there you will see a picture of what we call the langmeer on the right-hand side and a kortmeer, shorter one on the left-hand side. I just took the rod, and right at the beginning of this langmeer, there was one single old rooias kop, what we call it. It was old, it was stinky like hell, and you could hardly fasten it onto a hook, but I managed to get it. And I just started to walk all along the langmeer to the end of it. You can see the picture there. And any place was as good as any other place. So I just turn to the left side of the Langmeer. That is now the inside of the harbor, not the seaside of it, the inside of the harbor. And I just let the boat down right next to that particular block that you see on the photo. And only last week I walked this Langmeer again to take that photo. It wasn't minutes after I let the line down when a galjoen took hold of the bait, and I caught a big galjoen straight away. Now, I was referring to belief. I walked back home, and when you get to our house, there's a little hekkie in front, little small gate, and then we had a stoep in front of the entrance door. And when you pass the stoep, my mother had a garden at the back with an old dilapidated table next to the garden, what we normally use to clean the fish on. And as I opened the gate, she looked over what we call the onderdeur, the lower part of the door, and she said to me the following words: "Flippy, go down to the table, I'm bringing the knife." Just like that. Coincidence? No. True belief? Yes. I asked, she asked, and we were both answered. Also part of the beliefs of the old Gansbaai people is the fact that they never ever will go out on a Sunday. I refer to the Geelbek Skeidag, and it sometimes happened that that first Skeidag will be on a Sunday. They had no food, they had no money. The wind was blowing for probably 2 weeks without stop. And the first day is a Sunday. And they will not go out because they firmly believed that there will be many other Geelbek Skeidag which will not fall on a Sunday. As simple as that. And if they go out on a Monday and the fish is gone, so be it. There will be another day. People will probably ask us, how did we survive? My mother earned, as I told you before, 1.3 shillings a month. We had no other income. So how did we survive? She told us from a very early age that there's two things important in life. The one is to learn, and the other one is to work. Those two words were absolutely necessary in her beliefs for anyone that wants to be somebody in life. So we learned hard and we worked hard. My brothers and myself, immediately after school, we will quickly just get rid of our school clothes and we'll go down to the harbor and then clean the boats of the fishermen. We will clean the boat, we will coil the anchor rope, we will get rid of all the equipment and put it in the sheds and do all sorts of work. And when we uncoil the anchor lines, we will find small, undersized silverfish. We call it toppies, that the fishermen had hidden away for us. Because they knew we will come and clean the fish and they knew we will need food. So all these small fishes were put aside for us. So after we've cleaned the boat, we took the fish home and my mother spent hours and hours baking these small fishes on quite a big black pan on a primer stove. And we never had problem with food in our house. Silverfish and other type of fishes were our staple food. Simple as that. And pure and wonderful. And probably made us all clever. We assisted the fishermen to get the boats up the jetty. We used droppers. Now, a dropper is a long pole, long round pole. And the moment they start pulling the boat out, you've got to be very fast. You put the droppers in front of the boat so that they can slide it over. And the moment that dropper comes out at the back of the boat, you'll have to collect it and quickly move to the front and put it in front of it again. Remember now, these fishermen, it's after day fishing. They are tired. They just want to get the boat up, get us to clean the boat, get the fish out, weigh in, go home. So sometimes they were quite rude. If you're not fast enough or agile enough, they will tell you that straight away. But that was no problem. We accepted that. That was our job because we know that that particular fisherman will have small fish hidden away somewhere for us to take home. We also assisted the vendors that come to Gansbaai. They will come to sell their fruit, the vegetables, apples, whatever. And they will immediately go right through the town to the very last house at the end of the main street, and that was our house, because they knew our children were all ready to market their products. We were honest, we were hardworking. We jumped on the lorry or the bakkie, and we will start from the next house up right to the town, and we will tell them that Koos is here selling apples at so-and-so, and we will market that particular product. And at the end of that session, we will get our portion of whatever was to be sold that day. And that was food and vegetables, because we earned it. Every December, we went on holiday at Gansbaai. My mother had a big tent, but we couldn't afford paying for the site. So the shop owner arranged from many years ago already that we will work, all our children, every single one from top to bottom, from the eldest to the youngest, worked shifts in the shop, 6 to 8 hour shifts. Sometimes we start 8 o'clock in the evening, it goes right through till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the next morning, depending on the music and the dancing that's going on around the shop. We will work, and the money that we earn will be used to pay for our site. So we never paid for the site, and we never earned money, but we had a wonderful holiday period every December. But my mother was clever. In the evenings, especially when we worked night shifts, she will walk right to the camp and watch all the typical party places where the people were drinking and dancing and having a good time. And early in the next morning, before sunrise, still dark, she will wake us up, give us a torch and either a little bag or a basket, and she will tell each of us, Flippy, you go to that particular place, and she will name the place. We will know all the places by name. And Jannie, you will go that place. And she will indicate all the places where the parties went on the previous night, so that we could go and collect the empties, the bottles. The bottles we used to get back in the shop the next morning or day after, and that was our pocket money. We had a wonderful time, but we worked for it. My brother, especially my brother Jannie and myself, used to make bloedlijnen, bloodlines for the fishermen. Now, a bloodline is a cotton line, quite thick, probably as thick as my pinky, and is used to catch sharks. So what we do is we literally tie this line on the one pole at a long, probably up to 100 yards to another pole. And the butchery or the abattoir was very close to our house. I remember our house was the very last one in the main street. So we will collect a whole bucket of blood, and we take a cloth, and we will literally walk with this line from the one pole to the other pole with this blooded, and then we will blood the line all the way down. The line will then be dried in the sun, and the fishermen will pay us for these lines, and that was income. Not for us, for the family. Very, very rarely use money for ourselves. It's always in the pool. Whatever you earn goes in the pool for the family. Another interesting story that I want to share when we're talking about money is that we often combine work with pleasure. There was an old uncle called Alwyn, Uncle Alwyn, who stayed in Gansbaai. And Alwyn often used his horse cart to come to Gansbaai. Our house was the closest to the gate. And whoever of us heard that Alwyn is on his way, we will just shout, Alwyn, and then we'll start running. And the one that got first to the gate will open the gate for him, and he will throw us a penny. And we call that penny a devil's penny. Now, why a devil's penny? Here you can see an image of the penny. The queen was holding a trident, a staff, but we believed that that queen was not a queen, it was a devil, and that trident was a 3-tand vark. So we called it a devil's penny, and that devil's penny was the only money that we never shared. That was our money, whoever was first to open the gate. And we used the devil's penny to go and buy what we call naamlekkers. You remember those letters with a heart shaped, with the letters on the I love you or kiss me or whatever. We bought naamlekkers, and we also bought 4 of these, I can't give the name anymore, I believe, but these round black sweets, we bought those sweets. That is a devil's penny. From the age of about 12, I was strong enough to go out fishing with a Gansbaai fisherman on weekends and especially holiday periods. And there was a wonderful system, a financial system in place to pay the fishermen for the fish that they weighed in. We called this financial system the Fourie system. Now, when you weigh in your fish, the gentleman will give you a small piece of paper with your name on it, the type of fish that you caught, and the weight. And that piece of paper you will keep until Friday afternoon. And you will go to that little house. We are very fortunate that little building is still standing in the Gansbaai Harbour, although unfortunately with a big Coca-Cola sign and ugly yellow frames, but the building is still standing. We go to that particular building on a Friday afternoon and we will hand in this piece of paper and the lady will do the calculations, lady from the corporation, and she will give you money. Now, the moment the money has been handed over, it's a transaction. I will give her my piece of paper and she will give me the money. Now, that piece of paper was called die Fourie. The transaction means that it has been done. It's complete. That is voldaan. The job is now finished. You've weighed in your fish. You've got your piece of paper. You handed it in. I've given you money. That is voldaan. And the Fourie is still known in the Gansbaai area as that little piece of paper. Many years ago, one of the professors, Stellenbosch, gave the opportunity to the public to sponsor words to be incorporated in the HUT dictionary, the big Afrikaans dictionary. And I paid some money to register 2 words in the HUT, and it's probably still there. And the one word is the Fourie, and the other word is kies. Okay, I'm still talking about surviving. How did we survive? We had our own chicken and we had a cow. We often distributed the milk to especially the teachers in the area. They would give us money for that. That would go into the pool, but the eggs we always used for ourselves. When it comes to learning, it was very well known that Tanstini Sekenas always came first in the class. That was a known fact. There was no need for motivation from her side. It just came natural. We, from early age, knew that you've got to work hard and you've got to study hard because you've got to get somewhere in life. I can recall only one incident that my mother put pressure on me particularly. It happened as follows. One evening after she attended what they call a VLV meeting, a Vroue Landbouvereniging meeting, she woke me up and she said to me, "Flippy, is there a new boy in your class?" I said, "Yes, mother." She said, "A very new woman, a strange woman came to me tonight at this meeting place and asked her whether she is the mother of Flippy Fourie." And she said, "Yes." And this lady said to her, "I just want to tell you that my boy is now in his class and he's very clever, and that will be the last that Flippy will stand first in the class." Simple as that. And my mother looked at me and she said, "Flippy, I cannot teach you anymore. I can do nothing, but I can make coffee. And if you want to study long hours, I will make coffee to keep you awake. But don't let that boy stand in front of you in the class." All that I can say is my mother continued going to the VLV meetings and she was happy to go. Still talking about learning. My mother, she was a special woman, as you probably know by now. She collected and had boxes full of newspaper articles, and she categorized it in various subjects: history, science, special historical moments, date figures, presidents. And she categorized all these pieces of paper and photos, etc., in these boxes. And she made it very easy for us to do our school tasks. You just go and open a box. If it's something to do with medical, we open a box which was categorized medical, and there will be lots and lots of pictures and articles and photos, etc. There you see Tanstini. She was an extraordinary, intelligent, and absolutely remarkable woman. Just before she passed away, she called my elder brother in, and she told him she's happy to go because all our children has arrived somewhere and has got good job. That was my mother. Why did we come back to Gansbaai? All 8 of us came back. 1 to Hermanus, 2 in Gansbaai, 1 in Bos, and 4 in Vansgaan. Why? Because everything was familiar. We had the knowledge of each and every of the old houses in the area. I had the knowledge of most of the fishing spots. I probably can still name easily up to 50 rocks or more, from the Plaat right down past the Kelders, past Vansgaan, past Gansbaai, down the Gees to Pearly Beach. I can name them all. That's what you grew up with. So it's knowledge of the area. It's the absolute love for the sea. It is memories of happy moments. It's memories of a wonderful mother that taught us life and taught us how to love. That's why we came back, all of us. We call all that I'm referring to now, all of us, we call it home. That's why we can start sharing our moments together, because it's home. What you see there is the various rocks that I refer to, all the names. It's probably not necessary to repeat them all. But when we talk about the Plaat area, there's at least 18 names. I can probably, and the name sounds like music to one's ears. Just listen to this. There's a Soepies Klip, Meerkom, Voorsterklip, Maarbankies, Vyeklip, Otterbaai, Verwolf, Hoerkaas, Hardloperbankie, Skierbank, Galjoenbank, Klein Galjoenbank. All those names is that top section, just up to the Kelders. Then you get all the names in Stanfordsbaai, all the names around Gansbaai, down to Danger Point, various names in the Vansgaan area, up to the Gees and Elkhaalsmond. I can name them all. So, what does Gansbaai look like today? What used to be Gansbaai, that small area right there in the middle, now in the municipal area consists of Klipgat Caves, the Kelders, Gansbaai, Danger Point area, Van Dijksbaai, which is actually Kleinbaai, then further to the right side, Vansgaan, and then also Pearly Beach, Paardskeerdersbos, and all the farms in the area. The population was about 13,320 in 2011, and 2021 over 20,000 permanent residents. So Gansbaai has grown tremendously. This is what Gansbaai looks like today. But what have we learned from everything that I was talking about this afternoon? I think the first thing that is evident is that growth is not necessarily bad. A lot of the people that moved into the Gansbaai area now are very intelligent, very educated, people with lots of skills, and a lot of capital injections, especially in the tourism and abalone industry, were made in the last couple of years, which is excellent for the Gansbaai area. So that's the first thing we must realize. But secondly, and extremely important, we absolutely must continue our efforts, although long overdue, to preserve our history and our heritage. We must not stop talking about old Gansbaai. We must share our thoughts and our experiences with our children and our grandchildren. We must talk about the values that we've learned in those old times. Difficult times, but wonderful times. Because you learn values, I get the impression the young children today are not aware of. And why not? It was such a wonderful time. We must share those values with them and talk to our children. Tell them stories. Tell them about your own experiences, whether it was a Gansbaai or wherever. Tell them about your life and how you grew up and what you've experienced, the values you've learned. I think that's very important. And then lastly, we must never take the astonishing and breathtaking beauty of the area around us for granted. We truly live in the most beautiful part of the whole earth in this Oeverstrand area. Look at all those photos. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And we must not take this for granted. I recently bought myself a small Suzuki Jimny 4x4 vehicle, and I called this vehicle Kokoro. It's a Japanese word that means the place where your heart, your mind, your body, and your spirit comes together. That little GP takes me to those places. And all those places, whether you have a 4x4 or not, are right around us. Enjoy it. We must enjoy it. And we must appreciate this and not take it for granted. In conclusion, I would like to quote the last verse of a very beautiful poem that is titled The Sea Limits. It's written by Dante Gabriel Rossetto. And I'm going to read this to you because it more or less sums up what I was trying to tell you and what I was trying to tell you about Kokoro and the world around us and the sea which is ever present around us. Sometimes the sea is wild, sometimes stormy, sometimes very quiet and serene, sometimes really beneath, as we call it in Afrikaans, but it's always amongst us. Gather a shell from the strewn beach and listen to its lips. They sigh the same desire and mystery, the echo of the whole sea's speech. And all mankind is thus at heart, not anything, but what thou art. And earth, sea, man are all in each. I thank you. The question is, do the girls work as hard as the men, the boys, the brothers? Yes. I refer to the vendors that come to town. They were all part of all of us when we jumped on the lorries, and they marketed as hard as we. They certainly work in the Ellen Carlsmon shop, all the shifts, sometimes on their own. Sometimes my mother will arrange that before it's time for them to come home, we will fetch the girls, because we talk about late hours, probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes later. They did a lot of other work in town. My mother always looked after elderly people, especially when it's time for them to pass away, the last couple of days. She spent hours and hours with them until the end. That she just found that something that she got to do. In many of those instances, the sisters, my sisters, will look after us, prepare the food. I helped my mother with normal tasks that she would have taken, washing, etc., etc. Now they worked out. And maybe that is the cause of why many of our brothers and sisters went into the medical field. They worked as hard as us. Not manual work, but certainly they contributed to the income in a great way. The question is whether the Gansbaai canoe was motorized or not. Originally not. We rowed the boats, and even at a later stage when we got hold of the first little outboard machine, we still row the boat out till past Gansbaai, which is probably 3-4 kilometers in the sea before we start using the machine, the little outboard, because it's taking petrol and petrol costs money. So we will row as far as we possibly can and then start using the old engine. When I went out with Romans Visagie, we first started with a very old 5.5 horsepower even root engine. That thing could hardly move the boat. It's just chop, 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 chop. If it's really in cases of emergency, we could use it to get out of trouble. So originally we only rowed. The question is, I talked a lot about galjoen and geelbek, and what about sharks? Did we catch them? The Gansbaai area is probably the area around the South African coast where you can still today catch the most species of fish at a given time. And this is the absolute truth. We can easily weigh in on a competition day up to 12, 13 species of fish still today. So there are many species, silverfish, red roamer, kabeljou, geelback. There's many species around Gansbaai area. When it comes to sharks, the shark industry was very big, extremely big in the old Gansbaai time. We caught a lot of sharks. I personally caught a lot of sharks. We used to use only the liver of the shark. The whole carcass was put on lorries. I don't want to say this really, but where the existing spar is in Gansbaai today, used to be a big open area and tons of shark carcasses were buried in that ground, down below where the spar is today. We only used the liver. Then later on, they start using the fins. And then still later, they start using the skin. From what I've heard, they exported the skin to places like Congo, where they use it for making handbags and shoes and that type of thing. And then right at the end, they start using the meat as well to make shark biltong. And you can still go to Gansbaai, one of the shops there, and buy shark biltong. So it became a very big industry. And in winter months, especially in winter months, the fishermen rely on catching sharks. That was their income. So yes, lots and lots of sharks were caught, especially the grey shark, what we call the Fourie. The question was, is it true that the roads to Gansbaai were so bad that you could hardly use it? Yes. The answer is a simple yes, and that is why the Gansbaai area developed so slowly. It was extremely difficult with ox wagons and also with horse cars to get to Gansbaai. Thick sands, big dunes, loose sand, and a rocky area, and it was just difficult to move anything and to get anything from Gansbaai back, especially fish. It's no use catching 100 geelback and try and get it to Gansbaai if you can't convey it. And they had no use of conveyance except the boats. I heard a story, one of the gentlemen, when they heard about my talk, came to me and said to me that he heard that when the first breakwater was built in Gansbaai, that one very innovative gentleman, one of the old fishermen in Gansbaai, tendered to move the cement from Hermanus to Gansbaai by boat because there was no other means of transport. And he won the tender and became one of the richest persons in Gansbaai by using his sailboat to get cement to Gansbaai. So, too, was difficult to get to Gansbaai. The question was, when I talked about the weighing in of the fish, that we weighed it in at the corporation. Yes, at that stage, with the influence of the then principal of the Gansbaai school, Philip Zietsman, and also the mayor of Gansbaai, Uncle Willie Swart, two very intelligent persons. And they talked to the local fishermen and said, you can't go on like this, you get your fish, there's no market for it. And they formed a corporation. And they employed certain local persons to act in as weigh-in masters. So there's a specific place, it's still standing in Gansbaai, where you come with your fish, you weigh it in, you get your volduintjie, and it all goes to the corporation. They collect the fish and they will market it. They will sell it on behalf of the fishermen. And God forbid, if you, during holiday seasons, sell your fish to the holiday makers, because the next day you come with your 10 sharks to the corporation and they will simply tell you, go and sell the sharks to the holiday makers. There was no way you could cheat. You deliver your fish to the corporation. Right, that's it.
Thank you, Philip. That was a really exciting presentation. It was so good to see the scenes of Gansbaai and feel better informed about Gansbaai, which is, after all, our neighbour. So thank you. It was wonderful.